In this video, we're testing a range of different ballast from the hobby store and comparing that with homemade ballast, analyzing the end result between precision laying with quick mass distribution using a dispenser.
Hello and welcome to a video tutorial on the theme ballast and ballasting. You know, the commercial ballast is so expensive and you need tons of it when you're building a new model railroad. Or how much do you really need? And how expensive are really the commercial ballast versus a homemade ballast when it all comes into play? Well, that's two of the questions this video will answer for you.
Let's start this tutorial by checking how much ballast do you really need for a layout, and is it worthwhile really even considering making your own ballast? Let's check. I ballasted a test track to check how much ballast do I actually need to ballast 1 meter track, and found out that it takes 70 milliliters to do that. Then if it's a dual track or if it's in a yard, you need additional 15% to fill the gap in between the tracks. So for my layout, I have 38 meters in need of ballasting, 40 of them are dual line or in yards, and 10 meter are single line. And that sums up to approximately 3 liters of ballast. And the next question, of course, is it really worthwhile spending hours making your own ballast to save some pennies compared to buying in the shop? And here's the price list. Sticking out as the very most expensive one is from Kinetic in the Netherlands. I've tested a grey-brown ballast from them and it sums up to $57.5 per liter. And the lowest cost is the beach sand variant you make on your own, which sums up to $6.25 per liter. So yes, it seems like we can do significant savings by spending a few extra minutes doing the ballast on our own. And that also allows us to get that exact color or color mix we want for our layout, which exactly matches the prototype we're building our model to. So I went down to the beach to get some sand, and this is what it looks like, and the sand is like this. So I put this in my oven, 150 degrees Celsius for 1 hour to have it really dry. So let's start out with the beach sand. These household sieves will sort away seashells, parts of bigger particles which we don't want. And yeah, there are some, so that was successful. Next we'll sort away the particles which are too small. They will not look like ballast and they will cause problems with turnout motors and stuff. But as we do that, I noticed that everything goes through, meaning all the particles on my beach is too small to be used as ballast. It also turns out that the particles found on the beach is a wide variety of different colors and transparency, which would make coloring a bit more tricky. So based on this, I let go of the idea of using beach sand as ballast on my layout. Someone told me that Woodland Scenic is using walnut polishing media for their ballast. Since I have good experience with the ballast, I decided to purchase a bag of that crushed 18-40 grit walnut shells. And I color these walnut shells using pigment powder. You can typically find that in your DIY store or in your artist store. The pigments were kind of expensive and I found that I need 2 or even 3 of them to get to the color I have on the ballast in the area I'm modeling. And the pigments I picked up in the store was black, white and brown. So I made all of these shades you see here from these 3 pigments. The process of coloring the walnut shells is really simple. You just put the pigment into a little container, shake it for a while and then pour it out on a piece of bathroom tissue like I have here, or a towel or something. Then spray it with isopropanol. Fold it a couple of times back and forth so the shell move around a bit, and then spray it again and repeat this process a couple of times, and then the pigment sticks well to the walnut shells. And the final result looks indeed very much like Woodland Scenic medium ballast for HO scale. So let's put this ballast to use. For that, I'm using a dispenser. This dispenser can either be 3D printed. There are tons of them out on Thingiverse. I also have one in my 3D model shop. Then take a brush and knock on the rails. That will compress the ballast in between the ties, and also any ballast lying on top of the ties will fall off. Add ballast also in between the tracks. So here's where our 15 extra percent comes into play. And then I use an eyedropper. This eyedropper contains a 50-50 mix of wood glue and water. And I drop in between each tile. What you see here is that the ballast has expanded in between the ties, so it kind of looks like it's overfilled. I have seen this phenomena also on some rare occasion with Woodland Scenic medium ballast, but not to this extent. I was hoping that it should shrink back during the drying process, but it did not. So I have to cut away all the ballast in between the ties which was sticking up. Using a 3-rail system, the ballast efficiently stops all the trains because it lifts the slider and no train can pass. I got kind of curious what caused this expansion of the ballast in between the ties. So what I'm doing here is I'm repeating the process in a transparent bucket or a container. So first spraying isopropanol and then dripping with water. I don't have glue in this mix, but just water. After a few minutes, all the water has been absorbed by the walnut shells, making it expand. The conclusion from this is that I cannot use crushed walnuts for ballast on my layout, and Woodland Scenics are probably adding something that prevents this. A bit surprising, all this, but that narrows our selection down to a ballast from the hobby store. This one I had already in my storage. It's a Noch ballast 9376, made to match the C-track, so I don't think it's a good color match for my layout. This ballast, judging from the weight and also from the transparency of the particles, seems to be glass. Polishing agent glass, I don't know. This is what it looks like in microscope. So that is one possible DIY project further on. Next ballast is the most expensive one. It's the Kinetic. It has good particle size, good surface opacity and very nice color. So I think that even though this is the most expensive one, this will be the selection for my model railway. The next one I used a lot on my previous layout. This is the gray color of Woodland Scenic medium ballast based on walnut shells. So we're gonna try this. We're also gonna include in the test the beach sand, but also this crushed walnut, which I made brown. I'm gonna run some tests on all of these ballasts to see how much the color differs when it has been glued in place. So I've glued all the ballast on a piece of plywood, which represents the sub road bed on my layout, which is a 12mm thick plywood. Then I take half of it, spray it with isopropanol, and then use my eyedropper to glue the ballast in place. So now leave all these samples to dry and we're gonna see what it looks like. So after drying, this is what the beach sand looked like. And there is a bit darker, of course, to the right, which has been glued in place. The walnut shells changed color a lot, and also the pigment seems to be lying on top as a coat, very ugly, so not a good solution. The Noch ballast, the dark gray, was a minor change, a bit darker but not all that much, so that's a good thing for you guys with C-track, knowing that. This is my Kinetic ballast, which I will use. There was a slight darker color in the glued part, but not much. It still kept its surface opacity and color, so nice ballast really. This was the Woodland Scenic gray. It went kind of transparent, and I'm not going to use this anyway because it's the wrong color for my layout. And then the Noch Ballast Grey, I was hoping that this would be a candidate, but I don't really like the color actually. And also when glued, it increased its transparency. Same with this brown. Now the glue is not entirely dry here, but the glass-like particles kind of vanish when glued in place. Now these ballast you see here on the plates are of course not all of the ballast I've tested and not all the ballast out there, but it represents the three main type of ballast: made from gravel, made from glass, made from walnut shells. Next up is a comparison between mass laying ballast, which is done with a dispenser, and then just glue over the whole thing, including the ties or sleepers, compare with this. Here instead I'm pouring the ballast over the area with a small container and then pushing all the particles in place using a soft brush, kind of. When all the particles are in place, meaning not on top of the sleepers or on the ties, I spray the entire area with isopropanol. The glue I'm using for this ballasting is matte medium from Liquitex, mixed with 50% water. And instead of pouring it over the entire track, I'm dispensing 2 drops from an eyedropper in between each pair of sleepers. Once that has dried, I airbrush the rail sides using acrylic paint, a mix of, I would say, 90% brown and 10% black. Okay, so let's compare these two methods of laying, also material. This is the precision laid ballast, and you can see the effect of using matte medium instead of wood glue, that every particle is visible, comparing with this where you see that the glue is kind of filling up the space in between the different particles in the ballast. So this is much quicker. It's 1 meter is made in 50 minutes compared to 1 hour. I bounced some ideas about this ballasting video ahead of making it in the Patreon chat group, and a guy called Gerald said that, hey, if you're making a ballast video, please include turnouts, because there are not a single YouTube video out there where they actually cover ballasting of turnouts. So we're gonna do that. Here are the turnouts. They look a bit different depending on manufacturer, but they all have a movable part. That part must not be exposed to glue or ballast, of course, because then it will not work. This is what the turnouts look like in my system. This is Marklin K-Track. It has a movable part up here, and then the movement is transferred with its arm down here. So I have a long distance which has to be kept away from both ballast and glue, but there are tricks for that. So I start by covering the track sides with wood glue, and I spread it with the paintbrush, a flat wide brush like this. And then I distribute the ballast over the non-movable part of the turnout. I avoid 3 cavities, meaning 3 sleepers away from any movable object in the turnout, just to be sure that the glue doesn't find its way there. With a round soft brush I adjust the particles in the ballast so there's nothing lying on top, and so that the cavities are filled. And it takes about 10-15 minutes for each turnout, and then it looks like this. Now we're ready to spray this with isopropanol. We're doing that to lower the water tension, so the glue will float better. And then I add with eyedropper a 50% glue, 50% water into the cavities, and as said earlier, I avoid the 3 last cavities before any moving parts. So I make sure that the glue do not find its way to the moving parts. I do them in another way later. But first, instead I use a small brush with glue, which is not been diluted. So I cover the bottom in those last 3 segments ahead of any moving parts. and then I add ballast on top. After that I vacuum away any additional ballast which has not stuck to that glue. I don't airbrush on turnouts to avoid any paint coming into the mechanism, instead using a paintbrush. While that is drying, I'm doing some finishing work like painting the switch lever weight. The top part should be yellow when the turnout is in position normal, which typically means straight ahead, but not necessarily. In my case here, the normal position will be straight ahead. So I'm painting that yellow, then I'm flipping this turnout to the other position and painting that top red. So now the locomotive driver can see the turnout position from a distance. Lastly, I do some weathering. One good agent to do that with is the Pan Pastel Corrosion Brown, but any powder, pastel powder works of course. So I'm just adding a bit of corrosion to all the parts which are assumed to be metal here. Finishing off by adding some green stuff, static grass and bushes around the turnout.
Alright, so that's what can happen when you set out to do a video on crushed walnut shells as ballast, that it turns out not to work all that great. Hey, if you have progressed further with that, solved the problem with the particles absorbing water and expanding, plus that the pigment dissolves into the glue, please comment in the comment field below this video and let us all know what the solution is. I hope you have some takeaways from this video. I do. And also, if you like the video, please click like, share this video and other videos about model railway and model railroad in your social media and forums wherever you're active, because the old man like me and you we're not all that great in sharing our hobby to the next generation. So if we don't want to slowly fade away with the hobby, then we have to share it and spread the word about model railway, and because it's the best hobby on the planet. Also, if you want to support the channel, get over to Patreon. Set up a support account there from $1, $2, $4, $20 per month, or make a one-off donation using the PayPal dialog found in the video description below. And if you're not yet a subscriber, subscribe, enable that little bell, and you will get the notification once the next video gets published. Until that happens, see you.